Hi, good day. My name is Bruce Stickney. I'm here to talk to you about retaining walls today, presenting Belgard retaining wall options. We're going to go through the fundamentals of installation. Hey, so here we are. We're going to talk today about building a retaining wall and the fundamentals that go into building a retaining wall. One of the things you'll always notice is there's every time we start doing anything is we always want to talk about safety first. And building a retaining wall, we're dealing with concrete products, there's noise, there's dust. So having, the right equipment, eye protection, something to, if you're cutting concrete, a breathing apparatus to protect you from the silica dust, and clearly a lot of noise. So ear protection is also critical. We also want to make sure we're wearing the right boots, steel toes. Anything you're lifting, if you dropped it, and it doesn't take much to break one of those bones in your foot. So, and I'm a big fan of wearing gloves. So everything I do, I always wear gloves. Just helps to protect me. So let's just get right into it. I'm going to talk a little bit about materials initially. We're going to stack up some alum blocks here. We've got some blocks stacked up, but always the fundamental for all of these block systems is an aggregate base. And, typically we're going to dig a little bit of a trench. We're going to fill that trench full of aggregate. This is called a 3/4 clear crush. It's a crushed stone. And the beautiful thing about that is water runs through it. One of the key things we always want to do when we're building a retaining wall is manage water. So what we'd be doing is we'd be building a little trench. Typically the trench, it would be 2 times the thickness of the retaining wall. So in the case of a block like this is a 12-inch block, we'd do a 24-inch wide trench. And we'd put in, for a small wall, about 4 inches, maybe a taller wall up to 6 inches of the crushed aggregate. Of course, then we're gonna run our tamper in, hit it with a compaction. Once it's compacted, now it's go time. Now it's time to start laying block. And whichever block that we're working with, these are the fundamentals. Now, what we want to go through is make sure we're geared up with perhaps we'd run a string line just to make sure if we're doing a straight wall, pin it off at both ends, string it out. The string mainly for straightness, not for level of the blocks, is what we'd work that in with. This is another idea is just if we're building taller walls, using a drain pipe. And of course the drain pipe, we put the holes, it typically has the holes in the bottom of it. You put it so the holes are down in the aggregate. And where it would be positioned in the wall itself, it would be in the aggregate base. So where the lowest point that the water goes to, that's where we want to see the drainage put in place. So let's just get going. I mean, I've got the right tools here. To me, when we're setting base row, is a nice dead blow hammer. We got some nice levels here. I really like this one. Simply as we're going to level the blocks back to the front and side to side. A 2-foot is always handy to have available. And the idea behind these pipes here. So this is kind of a fun way of doing it. Instead of come down with me to the base, instead of a typical where we would kind of screed out material, maybe we got some help there that's raking things out as we go. You can actually do similar to what you do with pavers, is you could lay out some screeding pipes like so, and then you could take your longer level and create your level with your screed pipes and screed back and forth. You could even, if you wanted to, use a little bit finer aggregate, like a half-inch clear crush, something like that, if it's easier to work with, just to set that base nice and level. Clearly in this area, we got a beautiful, and I like the idea of a top reed level. It's easier to see. We put that in place. We move our level aside. Now, let's just say we were going to carry on here. Well, all we do is we leave that pipe in place and move the next pipe over, and then carry on screeding as we go. So real nice basics in terms of setting your base, and then you're ready to go with your blocks. Now, when I'm doing the blocks, because there can be sharp burrs on the blocks, I'm going to put the gloves on. And the key things that I look at now is I'm going to have the blocks staged a little bit for me. So let's just pretend we got the block in here. And again, we're going to take the block. We're going to take our level. I'm going to put the level on the block. And just for illustration, level front to back. Now, you notice my level is not on the lip of the block. In this case, it's on the flat area. That's the stacking area. That's where we want to see it. So we're going to have it go in level. Block, set. I'm going to say, gee, we got to knock it down a little bit. As I use this dead blow hammer, I'm going to hit it in the corners. That's where the strength of the blocks are. And if I'm having to really pound it, that means I probably haven't done a good enough job on the base. So go back, screed out your base a little bit more, refine that. So it's minimal in terms of your set. And the beauty of a dead blow hammer is that it's set, it doesn't have any rebounding as versus like a rubber mallet. Now you notice in the case of this is alum block, there's wings typically on both sides. Of course, you knock the wing off, you can curve the wall. You have the wing on, you can build a straight wall. And all we will be doing is just setting block as we go along, setting our base row, move our pipes out of the way here, and carrying on. Of course, I'm faking it right now because I've got foam blocks, so a little lighter than the real thing, but it gives you a sense of just things to look for. So you're looking for the wall to lay up nice and level back to front and side to side. And what you're looking for is this tightness of this head joint in here. That's going to be an indicator of how square it's coming. And as you're stacking wall up, I like to look at the back of the lip here and just line up the wall from the back of the lip. It's absolutely critical that when you're building away, you want to make sure that if you need to do a little adjustment, tap, 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 tap forward, make sure you're coming nice and straight with the wall, okay? So step one, you're laying base course. This is where we come back to the aggregate again, right? You got a nice pile of aggregate. The beautiful thing about the clear crush is not only does it work for your base row, you also put it in the cores of the block. You also put it behind the block as your backfill component. So we always want to, the nice thing about this material is it's one material on the job site. You're not having to worry about ordering so much of this and so much of that. You just order one material. And that's the beauty of it. So I'm going to take this. Whenever I've got my base row in, I'm going to fill in the cores. I always put the weight in the block. I call it weight in the cores first, because that way if you're up and you're moving around the job site and say you kick the block, you don't want to knock it out. So the beauty of having the cores fill first, then we do the backfill, and then we're ready to sweep that top block off, make it nice and smooth, so we can come in with our next block. And of course, our next block, we put that in place, we slide it in. Now, what you notice here is, do I have to be perfect half and half on the bond? No, 25% overlap on the blocks below across the joint. That's the interlock that you want to have a minimum of 25%. So that's about 4 inches in the case of these blocks. And then as you stack the next blocks in place, you can clearly see that you would stack, core fill, backfill, compact. Core fill, backfill, compact. And these are just the key steps. And this is the thing, is you can build a wall 2 foot tall, or 20 foot tall, or 60 feet tall. It's all the same fundamental principles around construction. So as you're building, if you're doing it weight in the wall, and then you're building your backfill and compacting your backfill, Always compact backfill from behind the wall and then back, running your plate tamper. So we're coming back to the idea now of building that wall to last. And it's the fundamental step by step that we never go wrong. When we get into a circumstance where we start stacking block and then not core filling at the same time or backfilling at the same time, that's when we run into problems. So coming back to it, the fundamental best practice is core fill, backfill, compact, one row at a time, and then you never go wrong when you're building walls like this. Now, I mentioned about building taller walls. And of course, taller walls, what you would introduce is something called Geogrid, is one option for building a taller wall. There's other methods as well, but Geogrid is most common. And this is an example of this is be called a uniaxial strength in one direction. In this case, the strength is like this. This would then sit, if I was building with it, I would always start the Geogrid on top of the first block. I'd just put it right in behind the block. I'd have my gravel then sitting on the block or in the core of the block and around the Geogrid. I would then just simply put the next block on top and again come back with the rock and fill it in, and that's going to lock that Geogrid into place. Think of Geogrid just like if you wouldn't pour concrete without putting rebar in it. So Geogrid reinforces soil like rebar reinforces concrete. So just think about reinforcement, added factor of safety as you're building. It's an inexpensive approach to building walls, adding a little grid in, and you just never know when you need it. Terminology. Stacking the blocks up just on their own, no Geogrid, that would be called a gravity wall. And there are specific heights based on the batter or the setback of the block as to how tall you can build. And what's really important is that you're building to the capability and the mass of the block, not to what the building code says. So being aware of building code, it's important. Typically it's about 4 foot, but know the building code, but also know that there's guidelines to whatever wall you're working with as to how tall you can build it in a gravity wall circumstance. No Geogrid, gravity, no Geogrid at all. If you're getting into taller walls, that's when you may have to look for the roles of Geogrid. This is one example of a 4-foot Geogrid, but typically it can come in 6-foot or 8-foot high rolls, long rolls, and various strengths. Just like rebar has smaller bars and larger bars, Geogrid has lower strengths and higher strengths. So the right tools, the right materials to build the wall, and that's really what we're trying to accomplish here. So coming back to then say, well, how about finishing this wall off? How could I do that? Well, let's just think about an idea here where we're going to go ahead and we're going to put another block in there, tap, put it in place, double check level, and then as we go is we're going to come ahead and we're going to put a cap on that. Well, whenever we're capping, we always do a cut first, but then we bring in an adhesive, and we'd spray an adhesive on the top of the block, and then go ahead and put the cap on top in place. Again, tap, just to make sure it lines up nicely, and carry on as you go. One of the things at the top of wall, when the top of wall is stepping down, for example, there is what's called a half block in this system, the Allen block system, and if you put the cap like so, you could have your overhang of your cap here, your other cap down here, and it would create a nice transition on the top of the wall. So coming back to fundamental, we showed you a little bit about tools. We went through a little bit about best practice. Materials, aggregates are really critical here. And we addressed drainage, which is the #1 cause of failure of retaining walls. There's so much more that can go into this, and all of those things. When we look at the what's next, we look at it and say, son of a gun, we've got some beautiful training courses available. Allen Block certification training course. I love to instruct on that, and we go through hands-on as well as write a test. It's recognized internationally as a course. We get into there's ICPI courses, but bottom line is, you got a retaining wall to build, call us first. We'll help you. And that's really what it's all about, is if you get it off on the right foot, you got a good plan in place, you got a good design in place, then your build is going to be excellent. And if I summarize this as plan, design, and build, when we go through those steps, we never go wrong. So again, I'm Bruce, and just give me a call. I'm here to help. So as we said, the basics of building a wall, doesn't matter which wall we're going to build, you still have to put a good fundamental foundation in. And the aggregates work just beautifully. They address the drainage. And when we start to think about other wall systems that are available, and kind of, you can call them feature benefit of the different walls, I look at it as it's an aesthetic. It's a different look. When we introduce product over here, this is our new tandem Melville wall, a smooth face, vertical stack, and even what you notice here is this wall can be built in a case of a facing element with the backup block, or as a two-sided wall. That's pretty cool. That means you can build up, say you want to build up a wall and have a patio with a raised seating around the patio. This is a beautiful go-to. You want to build some posts, this is a really nice go-to. And I think that as we continue to build more interesting outdoor living environments, these are the types of products that you really want to think about. This product here, modern, smooth, vertical, or a slight batter, these are big blocks. Sienna edge. The thing about these is that you're going to pretty much want to have a crane come and lift these to put them in place. There's great tools and equipment, clamps that pick them up and drop them in place as you build with these. But a nice big block. You can see the closed ends on it when you come into a corner. Each block has got a raised nub for an interlock, and then a coping unit on top that's smooth. The coping unit can be used as a step tread as well. Really, really nice product that we're working with here, trying to continually innovate. The Allen Block Metro, brand new, smooth Allen Block. Who would have thought after all these years that we were going to make a smooth Allen Block? But this is really nicely dialed in. The block, the corner, the cap, a nice modern look, curves, corners, steps, you can do it all. And of course, the things that we always look at is, what about that support? So there's all kinds of literature that's available for all of these systems. For the engineering and the technical, there's even a software for designing these walls. And these are key things when you were getting into taller walls, and we have to have a building permit and things like that. And hey, how are we helping in terms of design? Well, if everyone's seen one of these before, well, we put the goggles on, and we can now get into 3D design with Bellegarde Design Studio. So from the basics of construction, all the fundamentals, the different looks, and the different things that you want to build with a wall, clearly a lot of options available. The support, the technical support on design, the planning, the estimating, we can help with that. And for sure, one of the beautiful things about communicating with our clients is the ability to show them visually what they're going to get before they get it. Virtual and reality. Brought to you by Bruce Stickney and Bellegarde. Thank you.